Chosen one, stop and feel the shift in the energy field around you, because a person from your past has reached a breaking point. They just lost their mind over you. The guilt is eating them alive, and they are losing their mind as they realize you survived what was meant to keep you small. You have already transitioned into your power, while those who tried to diminish you are left haunted by the undeniable reality that they have lost control of both you and themselves. Let us start before everything fell apart, before the cracks appeared, before the choices that could not be undone were made. Back when it was just two people who genuinely found each other and genuinely needed what the other one carried. You recognized something in this person. That is the truth. There was a real pull, not manufactured, not one-sided. Something in their energy matched something in yours, and you both felt it. Maybe you were both navigating a season of life that felt too big, too fast, and too unscripted. Maybe you were both figuring out who you were outside of the identities that had been handed to you. Maybe you were both carrying things that felt too heavy to carry alone. And in that shared weight you found each other. It felt like oxygen. This person became your first call, the one who received the unfiltered version of you, the one you did not have to translate yourself for. And the bond that built between you was not fragile or surface level. It was the kind that roots, the kind that survives the hard moments, the kind that makes you feel genuinely less alone in the universe in a way that nothing else quite replicates. Here is the piece of foreshadowing hiding inside that beauty. You were offering something this person had never experienced before in the way you offered it. And something in them, the part that had never healed, the part that had never been shown what clean, unconditional care actually looks like, did not know how to simply receive it. Something in them needed to manage and control the edges of what you were giving. Watch that detail, because it is going to matter more than you think. The very thing that made this connection so valuable, the way you gave without keeping score, the way you showed up without conditions attached, the way your loyalty was not a performance but a default, those exact qualities became the ones that eventually got turned against you. Not because you were naive, because you were generous, and generosity placed in the wrong hands does not get honored, it gets consumed, every single time. Here is where everything actually begins, not when things finally exploded, not when the truth surfaced. Before all of that, the first time your body told you something was off and your mind convinced you to dismiss what you felt it. Maybe it was a pause that lasted a breath too long. Maybe it was the way a certain subject got quietly redirected before it could land. Maybe it was a look that disappeared too quickly, or an energy that shifted in a way you could not name but absolutely registered. Small things, individually dismissible, but they accumulated, and somewhere in that accumulation, your gut assembled the pieces into a picture your conscious mind had not yet caught up to, and it said quietly, unmistakably, something is not right here. And then the negotiation started inside your own head. The internal debate between what you felt and what you wanted to feel, between what the evidence was beginning to suggest and what loyalty demanded you believe instead. You told yourself you were overthinking. You told yourself this was just your own anxiety, dressing itself up as suspicion. You told yourself that real loyalty means extending the benefit of the doubt. You told yourself a great many convincing things. Chosen one, that negotiation, that internal tug-of-war between your knowing and your love, is not weakness. It is the cost of being someone who carries both a gift and a heart. The gift sees clearly, the heart argues for mercy, and when the two are in conflict, the heart usually wins in the short term because the heart is louder and more immediately convincing, but the gift does not give up. That is the thing about real discernment. It is not a switch you can turn off. It keeps registering, it keeps collecting, it keeps building a case from information you are not yet ready to consciously accept until the case becomes too heavy to keep setting aside. What was accumulating in your awareness was not just evidence of someone struggling and making poor choices. What was building was evidence of something more deliberate, more calculated. The fact that you could feel it before you could see it, that is not a small detail. That is the whole point. Now we get into the pattern, because there is always a pattern, and the pattern is where everything starts making a completely different kind of sense. Crisis, resolution, calm, crisis, resolution, calm, over and over, with an almost clockwork consistency. The same category of problem, the same type of chaos, the same late-night call, the same mess that somehow always required the same person to show up and stabilize things. You, at the time your understanding was generous. You told yourself this person was struggling, that they were in a rough season and needed support. And because you are someone for whom showing up is not optional, because commitment means something real to you, you showed up every time, without keeping score, without demanding reciprocity as a condition of your care. If you recognized yourself in this message, hype this video to guide other chosen ones to this truth. The cycle was not accidental. A person who accidentally keeps repeating the same mistake does not repeat it with the same timing, the same fallout, and the same requirement for rescue each time. Accidents do not carry that kind of structural consistency. Patterns do. This person was not unconsciously falling into chaos. The decision to drink past the limit was conscious. The choice to enter a situation they already knew was wrong was conscious. The financial decisions whose consequences were entirely predictable were conscious. Every single one of those choices was made with enough self-awareness to know exactly where it was heading. And the cycle continued because, as long as the chaos kept arriving, and as long as you kept appearing to absorb its weight, there was no real incentive to change. Growth requires discomfort, and you were the comfort that made discomfort optional. You were not their friend in those moments. You were their buffer between themselves and the full, unpadded weight of their own choices, and buffers do not get to move. They stay exactly where they are needed, until the day they finally do not. When you stopped, the consequences landed, directly, without cushion. And for someone who had never had to absorb the full impact of their own decisions, that landing was significant. Not because you caused it, because you stopped absorbing it on their behalf. Those are not the same thing, and understanding that difference is how you release the guilt that was never yours to carry in the first place. Chosen one, breathe, because this is the part your gut always knew and your heart kept refusing to fully accept. While you were showing up, while you were being the steady, reliable, genuinely loyal presence in this person's life, something else was operating in the background, in the spaces you could not see, in the conversations you were never part of. Your name was in those conversations, not in celebration. Your character was being quietly managed. Information you had shared in trust, your fears, your uncertainties, the private moments of vulnerability that only someone close to you would have access to, was being circulated in ways that softened your credibility in the eyes of people around you both. Not loudly, not dramatically. In the way someone casually introduces a seed of doubt, in the way a detail gets retold with just enough shift in emphasis to change the impression it leaves. Your reputation was being gently, consistently undermined, so that if you ever became inconvenient, you would already be slightly less credible than you deserved to be. That is not the behavior of someone struggling and making poor choices out of confusion. That is the behavior of someone running a calculated strategy. Someone who understood the quality of what you brought and feared the day you would fully understand it too. Chosen ones, they never expected this, and they really didn't expect us to keep talking. You've noticed it. Chosen one channels disappearing, videos pulled, voices scrubbed from the platform. The mainstream media is cracking down on us, but we will not give up our voice. And now we have something they truly can't silence. The technology used to suppress consciousness has been reverse-engineered, and Destiny Engine is the result. What was once used against humanity is now your ascension weapon. Join Destiny Engine, and you're supporting your favorite channels while leveling up yourself at the same time. It's a 360 win. You can now MK Ultra yourself into 5D superpowers. Destiny Engine bypasses the conscious mind and rewrites the source code directly. Reality bends faster, synchronicities stack, your nervous system upgrades to a higher bandwidth. Put on headphones, press play, that's all, you switch sides of history. Click the link in the description. The takeover is internal. And there is more. This person's maneuvering extended into areas of your personal life that had nothing to do with them. Whether they crossed a line directly or positioned themselves to introduce disruption into something that mattered to you, they were operating in spaces that belonged to you. And then they stood right next to you, calling themselves your closest person, while the consequences of what they had set in motion were still unfolding around you. The audacity of that is not just remarkable, it is diagnostic. It tells you exactly what emotional territory this person was operating from: fear, insecurity, and the specific need to keep you positioned just slightly off balance, never quite fully ahead, never quite free enough to see the full picture clearly. Because here is the deepest truth of what was driving everything. You were growing, your clarity was expanding, your sense of self was becoming more defined and more visible. And a person who has built their entire identity around being the more dynamic, more central presence in every space they occupy cannot tolerate being outgrown. Being outgrown destabilizes everything they use to feel significant. So the move was to make sure you could not get too far ahead. And now that you know this, the picture that never quite added up finally does. Let us talk about the moment the distance grew, the moment something in you drew a line. However it happened, quietly or loudly, in a single direct conversation, or in a slow and deliberate fade, there was a point at which something in you said clearly and finally, I am not willing to keep paying this price. That was not failure. That was not cruelty. That was not you abandoning someone who needed you. That was the first fully sovereign decision you had made in a long time. You looked at the dynamic with honest eyes and recognized that continuing to participate in it was not loyalty, it was self-erasure, and you chose differently. That is a power move. The most powerful response to being used is not retaliation. It is not exposure. It is not a dramatic confrontation designed to prove a point. The most powerful response is to quietly withdraw your participation, to pull your energy back, to redirect your investment toward yourself, to let your absence say everything that an argument never could. The silence you left behind was not empty, it was deafening. Because when you are the person who has always shown up without fail, your absence announces itself like a shift in atmospheric pressure. This person felt it immediately, even if everything they showed the world suggested otherwise. Here is what deserves to be owned without apology. You were not wrong to leave. You were not being selfish. You recognized a dynamic that was built entirely on your sacrifice, and you stopped consenting to it. That is not a failure of care. That is what self-respect looks like when it finally decides to act. The complexity, the grief that exists right alongside the rightness of the decision, does not cancel the rightness. You can grieve what was real at the beginning and still know that what it eventually became required you to leave. Both things are simultaneously true. Your peace does not require you to choose between them. The defining move, the one that changed the entire equation, is this. You did not need this person's validation to confirm you made the right call. You already knew. You have always known. The way the weight lifted, even inside the grief of it, was your answer. After you stepped back, something very revealing happened, and you may not have recognized it for what it was at the time. You watched this person appear to be fine, no chase, no honest accounting, no genuine reckoning with what had happened between you, just the performance of being unbothered, new activity, new faces, apparent momentum. And maybe, if you are willing to be honest with yourself, that apparent ease stung a little, because you were not fine. You were processing something real and significant, and watching someone seem to move past it without visible effort suggested a version of events in which none of it had mattered as much as you believed it did. That appearance was exactly what it was designed to make you think, and it was completely inaccurate. Here is the truth about people who go quiet and perform being fine after losing someone genuine. That performance is the most expensive one a person can attempt to maintain. It requires constant upkeep. It requires ensuring that the right things stay visible and the wrong things stay buried. It requires staying occupied enough that the quiet never gets a real chance to arrive, because in the quiet the performance collapses. What you did not see was the monitoring happening from behind the performance. You were being observed from the distance that was pretending to be comfortable. Your life was being tracked through whatever channels were available, through mutual connections, through your public presence, through any second-hand information that could be gathered without making the interest obvious. And every time evidence arrived that you were doing well, building, growing, becoming more yourself rather than less, that evidence created a specific and deeply uncomfortable problem. Your progress was a standing contradiction to the internal narrative this person had been using to justify everything they did. Your continued wholeness, your visible forward movement, your refusal to appear destroyed, those things were more destabilizing than any direct confrontation would have been, and this person could not stop looking. The guilt is not a metaphor, it is physical. It arrives before full consciousness does each morning, a specific weight that is already present before the first rational thought of the day forms. It is the automatic inventory of what was done and what was never addressed. It arrives reliably, like a debt that keeps compounding because the principal has never been touched. And reaching for the phone has become both the escape and the source of the problem. Because somewhere in the scrolling, in the quiet compulsive checking on your presence from a safe distance, something connected to you surfaces, and the guilt spikes, sharp, familiar, and impossible to dismiss. This person has been doing this repeatedly, looking in on a life they removed themselves from through their own deliberate choices, and every time they look, you are still there, still intact, still moving, still whole. That image does not provide comfort, it provides indictment, because part of this person needed you to be struggling in order for their choices to make a different kind of internal sense, and you are not struggling, you never were. The daily evidence of your continued wholeness is precisely what is making them lose their mind. Guilt that has nowhere to go does not stay contained. It recruits, regret joins it, shame joins it, the weight of unresolved time joins it. The full internal accounting of who they have been assembles itself and takes up residence in the body, as tension that never fully releases, as restlessness that travels from one situation to the next, as a hair-trigger irritability that surfaces in contexts that have nothing to do with you. The people around this person are beginning to sense that something is off. They cannot locate it precisely, but they feel it, the same way you used to feel it, because your discernment was never wrong. Your silence is the loudest presence in this person's life right now, and they genuinely do not know what to do with it. There is something specific happening that deserves to be named directly, and it is connected precisely to the losing their mind part of this. This person is preoccupied with you, not loudly, not in any way the people immediately around them would fully recognize, in the private compulsive way that emerges when someone has something deeply unfinished with a person they cannot approach directly. The checking in happens repeatedly. The casual questions posed to mutual connections, questions designed to gather information without revealing interest. The monitoring from a distance that gets framed internally as just seeing how things are, but occurs with a frequency that tells a completely different truth. The behavior is the confession that words will never deliver. You do not keep returning to someone who holds no real weight in you. The repetition is the tell. What is also happening inside that preoccupation is the rehearsal of imagined conversations, the accounting this person would offer if they ever worked up to actually offering it, the explanation that casts them in the least damaging light, the version of events that makes their choices seem less intentional, less calculated, less like what they actually were. This person has run that rehearsal more times than they can count. It has started to feel almost like the memory of something that genuinely took place, except it did not take place, because every time they get close to making the actual move, something stops them. The fear of how you will receive it, the shame of having to look directly at what was done without the usual mechanisms that soften the reality. The reasonable concern that you will see through the partial truth they are prepared to offer, and you will know that the full truth is still being withheld. That hesitation is its own form of consequence, needing to say something and being unable to say it. Having prepared the words and still being unable to deliver them, wanting to reach out and having the reaching out feel like standing at the edge of something with no certainty about what is waiting on the other side. That is the specific shape of losing their mind over you. Not dramatic, not loud, quiet, repetitive, inescapable, and entirely self-created. The most exhausting performance available to a person is performing being fine when they are anything but fine. Specifically, performing stability and ease when the person you wronged is visibly thriving, while you are quietly deteriorating internally, and the people immediately around you cannot detect the gap because you have maintained the surface appearance of someone who has it all together. Every social interaction now requires this person to produce a version of themselves that does not carry the weight of what they know. Every time a topic drifts close to anything adjacent to you, a redirect becomes necessary, a casual expression, a neutral tone, a response delivered with just enough ease to close the subject before follow-up questions can arrive. And every one of those micro-redirects costs something. Each is a small withdrawal from a reserve that nothing is currently replenishing. What lives underneath that performance does not have a simple name. It is the combination of guilt, grief, and the particular kind of loneliness that comes from having discarded the one person who knew the real, unedited version of you. Not the polished presentation, the inconvenient, unfinished, sometimes difficult version that you allowed someone to see because you trusted them enough to be genuinely seen by them. You were the person who knew this person for real, and they threw that away. Now they are surrounded by people who only know the performance, which means every interaction is a performance, which means they are never not alone in the way that matters most, the way of being truly seen, truly held, and truly known without having to manage what gets reflected back. The mask is cracking, not in a single dramatic moment, but in the slow accumulation of signals. A reaction that runs slightly too hot for what actually caused it, a mood that descends without any traceable reason, a defensiveness that appears whenever conversation drifts too close to something unresolved. The people in this person's life are beginning to feel that something is wrong. They cannot name it precisely, but they feel it, the same way you used to feel it before you had the words for it. Because truth does not compress indefinitely, it finds its way through, always. It is finding its way through right now. The universe is not passive. It is not an indifferent backdrop to human behavior. It is an active, precise system that records everything, misses nothing, and always, without a single exception, brings accounts into balance. The timing may not match what you would have chosen. The form may not look like what you imagined, but the settling is inevitable. Everything that was done in the shadows carries weight. That weight does not evaporate. It does not get quietly absolved by time passing. It accumulates in the body. It shows up as the inability to sleep with a clear conscience. It surfaces as the particular restlessness that follows someone carrying unaddressed debt, a restlessness that cannot be resolved by changing location, changing company, or creating new circumstances. The source of it is internal, and it travels everywhere the person travels. You do not need to be present at the moment the account settles to confirm that it is real. You do not need to monitor the consequences from a distance. Justice operating outside of your awareness is still justice, and every unit of energy you spend watching what happens to someone else is a unit of energy you are pulling away from your own expansion. The most powerful position available to you right now is not witness to someone else's unraveling. It is architect of your own ascent. Those two positions require entirely different focus. Choose the one that belongs to you. There is a real possibility that at some point in some form this person will attempt to re-enter your orbit. It may come indirectly, a message that tests the temperature before committing to depth, or a signal sent through a mutual connection to see whether the door is open. Or it may come directly, a conversation, something that resembles an apology. When that moment arrives, if it arrives, you need to be ready, not reactive, not guarded in the defensive way that inadvertently reveals how much something still costs you. Ready in the other sense, grounded, settled, fully in possession of yourself. The first thing to understand is this: any reaching out is primarily motivated by this person's need for relief from what they are carrying. It is about discharging guilt, not about facilitating your healing. There is nothing inherently wrong with that reality. People often arrive at accountability through self-interested paths, but your only genuine question is this: what do you need? What would actually serve your peace? What would allow you to put this down completely and move forward without it still attached to you? You are allowed to want the conversation. You are equally allowed to want nothing to do with it. Neither answer is better or worse. Neither answer is a measure of how fully you have healed. The only wrong answer is the one you give because you felt pressured rather than because you genuinely chose it. If you choose to engage, hold this clearly: you do not owe ease, you do not owe comfort. Genuine accountability requires this person to sit inside the discomfort of what was done while you receive it. Your role in that exchange is not to manage their guilt down to a size that feels bearable for them. Your role is to be present, honest, and fully in possession of everything you know. And you know a great deal. You know what happened. You know what was done. You know the difference between a genuine reckoning and a performance of apology that is actually a request for forgiveness without the full truth ever reaching the table. Your discernment is precise enough to read that difference in real time. Trust it completely. If the conversation never comes, that silence is also a resolution. This person's inability to face you directly is itself a statement. It is the loudest thing they are not saying, and you do not need them to say it out loud for you to already know that it is true. Chosen one. This is the thing I need you to carry forward from all of this. There has been a quiet, persistent voice running underneath everything, the one that says maybe you were too much, maybe your expectations were unreasonable, maybe the fact that this connection fell apart is evidence of something in you that needed correcting. That voice, wherever it originated, however it found its way in, has not been telling you the truth. Here is the truth: you were not too much. You were the standard this person could not rise to meet, not because you demanded the impossible, because they were unwilling to be honest, unwilling to stop choosing themselves at your expense, unwilling to show up for you with the same consistency and integrity you brought to them as a matter of course. Their unwillingness was the problem. Your expectation of basic reciprocity was never the issue. People who carry genuine depth, genuine loyalty, and genuine values have a particular kind of presence. It is magnetic. It is also revealing. Because when you spend real time with someone who operates at that level of integrity, your own compromises become visible by contrast. Some people respond to that visibility by using it as a compass, by allowing your example to make them want to be better versions of themselves. Other people respond to it with threat. They feel compelled to manage the source of the contrast so that their own choices do not look as stark by comparison. They work to keep your light from shining at full strength while they are nearby, not because you were doing anything wrong, because your existence as yourself was already exposing something they were not prepared to face. This person chose the second response, and that choice tells you everything. Not about your worth, about their fear. You were never the backup option in any of this. You were the blueprint, the experience of being genuinely known, genuinely supported, and genuinely valued. The particular quality of what you brought is now the invisible standard against which everything in this person's life is being measured. Every new connection, every attempt at closeness, Every relationship that has tried to fill the space since you stepped away, none of them are measuring up, because none of them are you, and this person carries that knowledge privately, permanently, in the specific way you carry something you cannot take back. That is not something to take pleasure in. It is simply the truth of what genuine people leave behind when they have been mistreated and choose to walk away with their character intact. They leave a standard, an unspoken bar, a permanent evidence of what real connection actually feels like. And everyone who comes after has to try to reach something they cannot quite define, because the person who set the standard is no longer in the picture. So let the record show. You were never too much. You were never unreasonable. You were never the problem that needed solving. You were the gift that needed honoring, and it was not honored. But that gift did not disappear when someone failed to recognize its value. It redirected. It is still here, still operating, still available to the right people, under the right conditions, at the right time. And those people, those conditions, that time, they are closer than you think. You stopped being a fixed reference point for someone else's direction and started becoming a force moving deliberately through your own life. The power did not diminish, the warmth did not go out, but the orientation shifted inward first, toward your own clarity and your own peace, and then forward into your own becoming. The person who chose the rocks made that choice with full awareness of what the rocks were. The impact was real, the consequences are ongoing, and all of it is running exactly as it should, without your attention, without your energy, without you needing to do anything at all except continue building the life that is waiting for you. Here is what you carry out of this. You know now, with a clarity you did not have before, that your capacity to love without transaction is not a flaw to be corrected. It is a rare and valuable quality. The difference is simply this: you now know who has earned access to it and who has not. You read the signals earlier. You trust the signals faster. You no longer talk yourself out of what your body already knows. They lost a real one. That is the most expensive truth sitting in this person's chest right now. Not just a connection, a standard, a version of being genuinely known and genuinely valued that they have not encountered since and will not find by accident. They know what they gave up, and that knowing does not get quieter with time. It gets louder, because every day that passes without resolution is another day the weight compounds. But here is the line that matters most. Their regret is not your identity. Their loss is not your purpose. You are not in this to be the thing they should not have discarded. You are here to be the full, uncontainable, sovereign version of yourself that you are actively becoming, and that becoming has been underway this entire time, whether you named it or not. The version of you that walked into that connection was real and good. The version of you that walked out of it is real and good and sharp and self-possessed in a way that simply could not have existed before the fire of that experience burned through the parts of you that were still waiting for someone else to confirm your worth. You do not wait for that confirmation anymore. You know what you bring. You know what you deserve. You know the difference between someone who is in your life because they genuinely want to be there and someone who is there because of what you offer them. You know it early now. You read it accurately. The discernment that was always in you is now faster, sharper, and impossible to override with wishful thinking. That is the gift inside the wound. That is the upgrade inside the loss. The guilt is eating them alive. The sleeplessness is real. The regret is compounding. The obsessive checking in continues in private. The mask is cracking under pressure that has nowhere to be released. The universe is settling accounts with a precision that requires absolutely nothing from you. And you are free. You are clear. You are in motion. You are no longer the person who stood still absorbing someone else's chaos while quietly becoming less of yourself. That version of you is gone. You walked through the fire that burned it away. What came out the other side is bigger, cleaner, entirely yours. So stop looking back at the wreckage. It is handled. Turn toward your horizon, wide open, full of everything being built specifically for the version of you that came through that chapter with your character intact. That horizon is not a consolation. It is the destination you were always moving toward, and it has been waiting patiently, specifically, exactly for the person you just became. Go get it, chosen one.